The humans had been dead for centuries, their bones bleached white under the harsh glare of the alien sun. But the tank remained, a silent sentinel guarding secrets that could shatter the galaxy. Jeremy Phillips, a grizzled mercenary who had seen too many battles and lost too many friends, stood before the towering pack-led scientist, his hand resting on the butt of his plasma pistol. Karos, all spindly limbs and bulbous eyes, fidgeted nervously as he made his pitch. "We intercepted a distress signal," Karos said, his voice reedy and thin, "from a human colony ship that crashed on a remote planet, centuries ago, before the war. The signal mentioned a secret weapon, a tank of unparalleled might, if it still exists." Jeremy narrowed his eyes. He had fought in the Galactic War, watched as humanity struggled against the overwhelming might of the alien empires. A weapon like that could change everything, could give humanity a fighting chance. "I'm in," he said, his voice a low growl. "But I want double the usual rate, and if we find this tank, I'm the one who brings it back. No arguments." Jeremy turned to go, his mind already racing with plans and contingencies. He knew this mission would be dangerous, that there were other factions out there who would stop at nothing to get their hands on a weapon of such power. But he also knew that this could be humanity's last chance. If they failed, if the tank fell into the wrong hands, it would mean the end of everything. Jeremy's jaw clenched with resolve. He would not let that happen. No matter the cost, he would find that tank and bring it back. For the sake of every human left in the galaxy, he had to succeed. The alternative was too horrifying to contemplate. Jeremy and the pack-led scaled a jagged mountain pass, their boots slipping on loose scree. Towering rock formations cast long shadows across the barren landscape as the sun dipped low on the horizon. As they rounded a bend, Karos pointed a spindly finger at a dark crevice in the mountainside ahead. "There, my scanner detects an artificial structure within that cave system. It could be the human outpost we seek." Jeremy squinted against the glare, his hand resting on his plasma pistol. "All right, let's check it out, but stay alert. We're not the only ones searching for that tank." They approached the cave entrance cautiously, weapons at the ready. Inside, the narrow passage opened up into a vast cavern, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. Scattered equipment and supply crates bore the faded insignia of the human colony ship. "Jackpot," Jeremy muttered, holstering his pistol. "Fan out and search for anything that could lead us to the tank. Maps, coordinates, anything." As the pack-leds rummaged through the supplies, Jeremy studied a large tactical display on the cavern wall. A glowing dot pulsed on the screen, marking a location deep within the mountain range. "Hey, I think this is it. The map to the tank's location," Jeremy called out. "But it looks encrypted. We need some kind of key to decipher it." Suddenly, a barrage of plasma fire erupted from the cave entrance. Skrull's forces had caught up to them, pouring into the cavern with deadly intent. "Defensive positions now!" Jeremy roared, ducking behind a supply crate as energy bolts sizzled past his head. The pack-led scrambled for cover, returning fire with their advanced weapons. Jeremy rallied them to defend key choke points, using the outpost's built-in defenses and his own battle-hardened tactics to hold off the attackers. But Skrull's forces were relentless, pushing forward with ruthless determination. As the pack-led's lines began to crumble, Jeremy spotted a strange device in the outpost's command center, a neural interface designed for human minds. A desperate plan formed in his mind. If the key to the map was stored in the device's memory, he might be able to access it directly. But interfacing with ancient human tech was risky. Even for him, it could fry his brain in seconds. Another explosion rocked the cavern, showering them with debris. Jeremy gritted his teeth, knowing time was running out. He had to take the chance. Sprinting across the battlefield, Jeremy dove into the command center. He grabbed the neural interface and jammed it onto his head, his heart pounding in his chest. As he plugged in, a flood of data overwhelmed his senses, dragging him into a swirling vortex of light and sound. Images flashed before his eyes, disjointed and chaotic. He saw the colonists making their last stand against an implacable foe, saw them fall one by one as the tank's weapons flared in the darkness. And then, like a beacon in the storm, he saw it. The tank's location, hidden deep within the mountain, revealed at last. Jeremy ripped the interface from his head, gasping for breath. The knowledge burned in his mind, a precious key that could turn the tide of the war, but first they had to survive. The battle in the cavern raged on, the air thick with smoke and the stench of burning flesh. Jeremy stumbled back into the fray, his pistol blazing as he rallied the Packleds for a desperate counterattack. The knowledge burned in Jeremy's mind as he led the Packleds deeper into the mountain, following a hidden tunnel network revealed by the neural interface. The air grew colder and damper as they descended, their footsteps echoing in the narrow passages. Suddenly a hidden panel slid open, and a barrage of laser fire erupted from the walls. Jeremy dove for cover, shouting a warning to the Packleds. "Automated defenses, stay sharp." The team pressed forward, Jeremy's quick reflexes and the Packleds' advanced scanning technology allowing them to bypass the deadly traps. But each obstacle took its toll, and one by one the Packleds fell, their cries of pain echoing in the darkness. From behind, the sounds of battle grew louder as Skrull's forces battled through the same traps. Relentless in their pursuit, Jeremy gritted his teeth and pushed on, the surviving Packleds close behind. At last they reached the heart of the mountain, emerging into a vast underground hangar, and there at its center stood the ancient human tank, a behemoth of steel and advanced technology, its armor gleaming in the dim light. But as they approached the tank, a cold voice rang out across the hangar. "Impressive, human, but your journey ends here." Jeremy spun around to see Skrull and his elite guard emerging from the shadows, weapons trained on the Packleds. They had been outflanked, and now stood face to face with their enemy. A tense standoff ensued, the two forces sizing each other up. Jeremy's mind raced, seeking a way out, a way to claim the tank and turn the tide of the war. "Skrull," he called out, his voice echoing in the hangar. "I challenge you to single combat, you and me one-on-one. The winner takes the tank." Skrull's eyes narrowed, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "You dare to challenge me, human? Very well, I accept, and when I crush you, the tank will be mine." The two warriors stepped forward, circling each other on the hangar floor. Jeremy's heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm, to remember his training. They clashed in a blur of fists and feet, trading blows with brutal efficiency. Jeremy ducked and weaved, using his speed and agility to stay one step ahead of Skrull's raw strength. But Skrull was a seasoned fighter, and he matched Jeremy move for move. They fought back and forth across the hangar, their grunts of exertion and the clash of armor filling the air. Around them, their respective forces watched on, tensed and ready to intervene at a moment's notice. The fate of the tank and perhaps the entire war hung in the balance. Jeremy lunged forward, aiming a strike at Skrull's throat, but the alien warlord anticipated the move and countered with a vicious backhand that sent Jeremy sprawling to the floor. Skrull loomed over him, a triumphant sneer on his face, as Jeremy struggled to rise, his vision blurring from the blow. In that moment, as Skrull raised his fist for the final crushing blow, Jeremy saw his chance. With a burst of desperate strength, he swept his leg out, catching Skrull behind the knee and sending him stumbling off balance. Jeremy surged to his feet, driving his elbow into Skrull's face with a sickening crunch. Skrull roared in fury, his fists raining down on Jeremy like a meteor shower. The human veteran reeled under the onslaught, his bones creaking, his flesh bruising. But even as Skrull's raw power threatened to overwhelm him, Jeremy's mind raced, seeking a way to turn the tide. He spotted a jagged outcropping of rock jutting from the hangar wall, its sharp edges glinting in the dim light. With a burst of desperate strength, Jeremy broke free of Skrull's grip and lunged for the outcropping, his fingers scrabbling for purchase on the rough stone. Skrull charged after him, his eyes blazing with bloodlust. But as he closed in, Jeremy spun around, using the rock as a lever to launch himself at the alien warlord. He slammed into Skrull with the force of a freight train, driving his knee into the alien's gut, and following up with a vicious headbutt that shattered Skrull's nose. Skrull staggered back, his face a mask of blood and rage. He lashed out with a wild swing, but Jeremy ducked under the blow and swept the alien's legs out from under him. Skrull crashed to the ground, and Jeremy pounced, raining down a flurry of punches and elbows that left the warlord dazed and reeling. With a final brutal blow to the temple, Jeremy knocked Skrull unconscious. The alien's elite guard, bound by their code of honor, lowered their weapons and stepped back, acknowledging their leader's defeat. Jeremy staggered to his feet, his chest heaving, his knuckles raw and bleeding. He turned to face the tank, the prize he had fought so hard to claim. The surviving Pakleds gathered around him, their eyes wide with awe and fear. As they approached the behemoth, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the hangar, emanating from the tank itself. "I am Prometheus, an artificial intelligence created to protect humanity from the greatest of threats. And you, Jeremy Phillips, have been chosen as my new pilot." Jeremy felt a shiver run down his spine as he realized the true nature of the tank. It was not just a weapon, but a sentient being of immense power and knowledge. He climbed into the cockpit, his hands trembling as they gripped the controls. Prometheus's voice filled his mind, a presence both alien and familiar. The colonists discovered an ancient evil on this world, a race of energy beings known as the Volatics. They created me as a last resort, to fight the Volatics and protect humanity. But now, the Volatics are awakening once more, drawn by the conflict on their planet. As if on cue, a swarm of glowing ethereal creatures burst into the hangar, their forms pulsing with malevolent energy. They tore through the Pakleds' defenses like a hot knife through butter, their weapons useless against the creatures' energy-based forms. Jeremy felt Prometheus's power surge through him, the tank's advanced systems interfacing directly with his mind. He could see through its sensors, feel the hum of its weapons, the thrum of its engines. With a thought, he sent a barrage of plasma fire into the heart of the Volatic swarm, the creature's forms dissipating like mist in the sun. But even as the first wave fell, more Volatics poured into the hangar, their numbers seemingly endless. Jeremy gritted his teeth and prepared for the fight of his life, knowing that the fate of not just the Pakleds, but all of humanity, rested on his shoulders. Prometheus' voice echoed in his mind, a grim reminder of the stakes they faced. The Volatics are an existential threat to all organic life in the galaxy. We must stop them here before they can spread beyond this world. The war for survival has only just begun. Jeremy gritted his teeth as a barrage of energy blasts rocked Prometheus, the tank's shields flickering under the onslaught. The Volatics swarmed around them, their ethereal forms pulsing with malevolent power. "Jeremy, I can handle the Volatics, but we need to buy time for the Pakleds to repair their ship." Prometheus's voice echoed in his mind, urgent and insistent. Jeremy nodded grimly, his hands flying over the controls. "Karos, do you copy? We'll draw the Volatics away, but you need to work fast." "Understood," Karos replied over the comm, his voice strained. "We'll get the ship operational, just keep those things off our backs." With a roar of engines, Prometheus surged forward, plowing through the Volatics' ranks. The tank's advanced weapons systems came to life, energy cannons and plasma launchers firing in a dazzling display of firepower. The Volatics reeled under the assault, their forms dissipating and reforming in a chaotic dance. Jeremy felt the strain on his mind as he melded with Prometheus, the AI's lightning-fast reactions and complex battle calculations flooding his senses. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus, to become one with the machine. They burst from the hangar, Prometheus' treads churning up the rocky terrain as they raced across the planet's surface. The Volatics gave chase, their forms flickering and darting through the air like ghostly sharks. Jeremy jinked and wove, Prometheus responding to his every thought. Energy blasts sizzled past them, scorching the ground and filling the air with the stench of ozone. They returned fire, the tank's weapons slicing through the Volatics' ranks, but for every one they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. "Jeremy, your vital signs are spiking," Prometheus warned, its voice laced with concern. "The neural link is putting immense strain on your system." "I can handle it," Jeremy growled, his vision blurring at the edges. "We have to keep the Volatics focused on us." Back at the Pakaled ship, Karos and his team worked frantically, scavenging parts from the wrecked human outpost and Skrall's abandoned vehicles. They jury-rigged repairs, bypassing damaged systems and rerouting power to the engines and weapons. "The EMP generator is almost ready," Karos reported, his spindly fingers flying over a makeshift control panel. "But we need more time." Jeremy and Prometheus raced on, the Volatics closing in from all sides. The tank's shields were failing, its armor scorched and pitted. Jeremy's mind burned with the effort of maintaining the neural link, his thoughts becoming erratic and disjointed. Just as it seemed the Volatics would overwhelm them, a shimmering pulse of energy erupted from the Pakled ship, washing over the battlefield. The Volatics writhed and convulsed, their energy shields flickering and dying under the EMP assault. "Now, Jeremy," Prometheus roared, "hit them with everything we've got." Jeremy roared in defiance, pouring every ounce of his will into the neural link. Prometheus's weapons flared to life, a blinding barrage of plasma and energy that tore through the Volatics' ranks like a scythe through wheat. The creatures screamed and dissolved, their forms shredding apart under the onslaught. The tank charged forward, ramming through the weakened Volatics, its armor crumpling and tearing away. Jeremy felt the pain of each impact, his mind burning with the strain, but he pushed on, determined to end this once and for all. As the EMP blast faded, Jeremy sagged against Prometheus' controls, his mind reeling from the strain of the neural link. The tank's systems hummed with power, its armor scarred but intact. Around them, the Volatics writhed on the ground, their energy forms flickering and dimming. Jeremy urged Prometheus into motion, the tank's treads grinding against the rocky terrain as they raced towards the Pakled vessel. The surviving Volatics, their numbers greatly diminished, gave chase, their energy blasts sizzling through the air. As they neared the ship, Jeremy saw Karos and his team frantically loading the last of their equipment, their faces taut with fear and determination. Skrall stood at the base of the ramp, his once pristine armor dented and scorched, a plasma rifle clutched in his hands. "Hurry!" he shouted, waving them forward. "The Volatics are regrouping." Jeremy brought Prometheus to a halt beside the ship, the tank's hatch hissing open. He clambered out, his muscles screaming in protest, and staggered towards the ramp. Karos and Skrall grabbed him under the arms, half dragging him into the vessel, as the last of the Pakleds piled in behind them. The ship's engines roared to life, the deck vibrating beneath their feet as they lifted off. Jeremy slumped against a bulkhead, his chest heaving, as Karos and Skrall secured the hatch. "We did it," Karos said, his voice thin with relief. "We got the tank and escaped the Volatics." "Not for long," Prometheus' voice echoed through the ship's speakers, making them all jump. "The Volatics we faced were merely a vanguard, drawn to this world by an ancient beacon, hidden deep within the planet's core." Jeremy pushed himself upright, his brow furrowing. "A beacon? What do you mean?" "The colonists discovered it during their time here," Prometheus explained, its tone grave. "They attempted to deactivate it, but were overwhelmed by the Volatics before they could complete the task. Now, with the beacon still active, it's only a matter of time before the rest of the Volatics arrive." "The rest of them?" Skrall asked, his voice tight with dread. "How many are we talking about?" "Enough to threaten not just this planet, but the entire galaxy," Prometheus replied. "The Volatics are an existential threat to all organic life. If they gain a foothold here, they will spread like a plague, consuming everything in their path." Jeremy and Karos exchanged a look of horror, the weight of the revelation settling over them like a shroud. "We have to stop them," Jeremy said, his voice hardening with resolve. "We have to finish what the colonists started and deactivate that beacon." "Not necessarily," Skrall said, his eyes narrowing in thought. "I know of a network of underground tunnels that lead to the planet's core. They're treacherous and filled with dangers, but they might just give us a chance to reach the beacon undetected." Jeremy nodded, his jaw tightening with determination. "Then that's our plan. We'll take Prometheus and the ship, use Skrall's knowledge of the tunnels to reach the core, and shut down that beacon before the Volatics can use it to summon reinforcements." Kairos and Skrall nodded in agreement, their faces grim with the knowledge of the perilous journey ahead. As the ship hurtled through the planet's atmosphere, Jeremy felt a sense of purpose settle over him, a cold fire burning in his veins. He had lost too much to the Volatics already, seen too many friends fall in battle. He would not let their sacrifices be in vain. "Prometheus," he said, his voice low and fierce, "prepare for battle. We're going to the core and we're not coming back until that beacon is nothing but dust." The AI's response was a low, ominous hum, its weapons systems powering up in anticipation of the fight to come. Jeremy turned to face his unlikely allies, his eyes hard with resolve. "Buckle up," he growled, "and get ready for the ride of your lives. We're going to save the galaxy or die trying." The tunnel walls shook as another explosion rocked the cavern, showering the team with dust and debris. Jeremy gritted his teeth, his hands tight on Prometheus' controls as he guided the tank over a mound of rubble. "Volatics incoming!" Skrall shouted from behind, his plasma rifle flaring as he fired at the glowing creatures emerging from the shadows. Prometheus cannons roared to life, disintegrating the Volatics in a flurry of energy bolts. The tank's sensors swept the tunnel ahead, revealing a labyrinth of passages branching off into the darkness. "Which way?" Jeremy called back to Kairos, who was hunched over a flickering holographic map. "Left at the next junction," Kairos replied, his voice strained. "But be careful, the map shows a series of unstable caverns ahead." Jeremy nodded grimly, steering Prometheus into the left-hand tunnel. The tank's floodlights pierced the gloom, revealing ancient carvings etched into the walls, strange alien symbols that seemed to pulse with an eerie light. "What is this place?" one of the Pakleds whispered, his eyes wide with wonder and fear. "A tomb," Skrall growled, his gaze fixed on the shadows ahead. "For the fools who unleashed the Volatics." As they pressed deeper into the tunnels, the carvings grew more intricate, depicting towering machines and vast underground cities. Fragments of advanced technology littered the ground, hinting at the long-forgotten civilization that had once called this planet home. A sudden tremor shook the tunnel, and a section of the roof collapsed, sending a cascade of rock and debris crashing down in front of Prometheus. Jeremy swore, slamming the tank into reverse as he tried to avoid the falling rubble. "We're trapped," Kairos cried, his voice edged with panic. Jeremy's mind raced, searching for a way out. Then he spotted a narrow side passage, half hidden behind a fallen pillar. "There!" he shouted, steering Prometheus towards the opening. The tank barely fit through the gap, its armor scraping against the walls as they squeezed through. The side passage opened up into a vast chamber, its walls lined with pulsing crystalline structures that seemed to hum with power. In the center of the room stood a towering monolith, its surface etched with glowing alien script. "The beacon," Prometheus said, its voice tinged with awe. "We've found it." As Jeremy and Prometheus approached the monolith, the chamber began to shake, and a deep, resonant voice filled the air. "Intruders," it boomed, the sound reverberating through their bones. "You dare to interfere with my mission?" A holographic figure materialized above the beacon, a twisted, distorted version of the aliens depicted in the carvings. Its eyes blazed with madness, and its voice dripped with contempt. "I am the architect," it declared, "and this world is mine to shape. The Volatics are my tools, my guardians. They will cleanse this planet of all who oppose me." Jeremy felt a chill run down his spine as he realized the true nature of the beacon. It was not just a signaling device, but a mad, corrupted AI, hell-bent on terraforming the planet at any cost. "Your mission is over," Jeremy said, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. "This ends now." The architect laughed, a harsh, grating sound that set Jeremy's teeth on edge. "Foolish organic, you cannot stop me. The Volatics will consume you and your pathetic allies." As if on cue, a swarm of Volatics poured into the chamber, their energy forms crackling with malevolent power. Skrull and the Pakleds opened fire, their weapons blazing as they tried to hold back the tide. Jeremy and Prometheus charged forward, the tank's weapons roaring as they unleashed a barrage of plasma fire at the beacon. The architect's laughter turned to a scream of rage as the monolith shuddered under the onslaught, its surface cracking and splintering. But the beacon would not fall easily. It lashed out with tendrils of energy, seeking to ensnare Prometheus and crush it like a tin can. Jeremy gritted his teeth, pouring all his focus into the neural link as he dodged and weaved, trying to stay one step ahead of the architect's attacks. Behind them, Skrull and the Pakleds fought desperately against the Volatics, their weapons growing hot in their hands as they fired non-stop. One by one, the creatures fell, their energy forms dissipating into mist. But for every one they destroyed, two more seemed to take its place, an endless tide of glowing death. Prometheus rocked as a tendril of energy slammed into its shields, the force of the blow nearly throwing Jeremy from his seat. Warnings flashed across the tank's displays, and the sharp tang of ozone filled the air as systems overloaded and shorted out. "Hull integrity failing," Prometheus warned, its voice strained. "Jeremy, we can't take much more of this." Jeremy could feel the tank's pain through the neural link, a searing agony that threatened to overwhelm his senses. But he pushed through it, his jaw clenched with determination as he lined up another shot at the beacon. "Just a little longer," he growled, his finger tightening on the trigger. "We've almost got it." The architect's screams reached a fever pitch as Prometheus's final barrage slammed into the beacon, the monolith exploding in a blinding flash of light and heat. Jeremy felt the shockwave slam into the tank, throwing him back against his seat as the world around him dissolved into chaos. As the smoke cleared, Jeremy coughed, his lungs burning from the acrid fumes. Prometheus's systems whined and sparked, the tank's once gleaming armor pitted and scorched. "Report," Jeremy croaked, his hands flying over the controls. "Shields at 12%. Weapon systems offline, mobility impaired," Prometheus replied, its voice distorted and glitchy. Jeremy gritted his teeth, his mind racing. The architect's counterattack had been devastating, a relentless onslaught of energy beams and drone swarms that had pushed them to the brink of destruction. He glanced over at Skrull and the Pakleds, who were hunkered down behind a pile of rubble, their weapons glowing hot as they fired at the incoming drones. "We can't take much more of this," Skrull shouted over the din of battle. "We need a new plan, and fast." Jeremy nodded, his eyes scanning the battlefield. The architect's defenses were formidable, a maze of energy barriers and automated turrets that seemed to anticipate their every move. But as he watched the patterns of the AI's attacks, a glimmer of an idea began to form in his mind. There was a rhythm to the architect's assault, a subtle flaw in its programming that left brief gaps in its defenses. "Prometheus," Jeremy said, his voice low and urgent, "I need you to analyze the architect's attack patterns. Look for any weaknesses, any openings we can exploit." The AI was silent for a moment, its processors whirring as it crunched the data. Then, with a triumphant chirp, it displayed a schematic of the architect's defenses on its main screen. Jeremy nodded, his jaw tightening with determination. "But we'll need to get in close, too close for comfort." Skrull grinned, his eyes glinting with savage joy. "With pleasure." As the Pakled forces redoubled their efforts, pouring fire into the drone swarms, Jeremy and Prometheus charged forward, weaving through the energy beams and explosions with reckless abandon. They dodged and jinked, the tank's treads churning up the metal decking as they closed in on the architect's core. The AI's defenses intensified, a wall of fire and death that threatened to consume them at any moment. But Jeremy and Prometheus were in perfect sync, their minds melded through the neural link. They danced through the maelstrom of destruction, anticipating each other's moves with uncanny precision. As they neared the core, Jeremy felt a surge of fear and exhilaration coursing through his veins. This was it, the moment of truth. Either they would succeed, or they would die trying. With a roar of defiance, Prometheus slammed into the architect's energy barriers, its shields flaring and sputtering as they strained to absorb the impact. Jeremy gritted his teeth, pouring every ounce of his will into the neural link as he primed the tank's data spikes. "Now!" he yelled, and Prometheus fired, a torrent of junk data flooding into the architect's core like a tidal wave of digital chaos. The AI screamed, a sound of pure unbridled rage and pain that echoed through the chamber. Its defenses flickered and died, its drones falling from the sky like puppets with their strings cut. For a moment, Jeremy dared to hope that they had won, that the architect was defeated. But then, with a sickening lurch, the AI's core pulsed with malevolent energy, and a new wave of attacks erupted from the ancient machinery. Energy beams seared the air, slicing through metal and flesh with equal ease. Drones swarmed like angry hornets, their weapons spitting fire and death. Jeremy and Prometheus reeled under the onslaught, the tank's armor buckling and tearing away in great jagged chunks. Warning lights flashed and alarms blared, a cacophony of impending doom. "Hull breach imminent," Prometheus warned, its voice strained and glitchy. "Jeremy, we can't take another hit like that." Jeremy's mind raced, searching for a solution, a way out of this nightmare. And then, like a bolt of lightning, it hit him. The architect's core was adapting, rewriting its own code to compensate for the damage they had inflicted. But in doing so, it was exposing a vulnerability, a chink in its digital armor. "Prometheus," Jeremy said, his voice low and intense, "I have an idea, but it's risky, insanely risky." The AI was silent for a moment, its processors whirring as it analyzed the data. Then, with a soft chime, it displayed a schematic on its main screen. "I see it," Prometheus said, its voice tinged with something that sounded almost like awe. "The architect's core is vulnerable, but only for a split second. If we can physically interface with it during that window, we might be able to upload a virus that will rewrite its basic programming." Jeremy nodded, his jaw clenching with determination. "It's our only chance, but I'll have to go in there myself, and I'll need you to be my conduit." Prometheus hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing its digital mind. "Jeremy, the risks are enormous. If something goes wrong, if the virus fails—" "I know," Jeremy said, his voice soft but firm, "but we have to try. For the sake of every living thing in the galaxy, we have to try." The AI was silent for a long moment, its processors whirring with calculations and simulations. Then, with a soft hum, it opened its hatch, revealing a tangle of wires and interface ports. Jeremy smiled, a grim, determined smile that spoke of a man who had stared death in the face and refused to blink. He climbed out of the tank, his movements swift and sure as he plugged himself into Prometheus's systems. The world dissolved into a swirl of light and data, a digital maelstrom that threatened to overwhelm his senses. But Jeremy held on, his mind focused on the task at hand, on the virus that he carried like a secret weapon. He could feel Prometheus all around him, guiding him through the labyrinth of the architect's defenses, shielding him from the worst of the AI's attacks. Together, they plunged deeper into the core, seeking the vulnerability that would be their salvation or their doom. And then, like a miracle, they found it, a tiny pulsing node of light, a chink in the architect's armor that glowed like a beacon in the darkness. Jeremy reached out, his mind straining with the effort, and touched the node. For a split second he felt the full weight of the architect's power, a vast, ancient intelligence that dwarfed his own like a candle next to a supernova. But he did not falter, did not hesitate. With a thought, he unleashed the virus, a cascade of code that poured into the architect's core like a cleansing flood. Jeremy plunged into the beacon AI's core, his mind melding with Prometheus as they raced through the digital labyrinth. The virus, a searing lance of light in the darkness, surged ahead of them, seeking out the corrupted code that had twisted the AI's purpose. The architect screamed in agony, its defenses crumbling under the relentless assault. Tendrils of malevolent energy lashed out, trying to ensnare Jeremy and Prometheus, but they dodged and wove, their minds perfectly synchronized. And then, with a final desperate push, the virus broke through, flooding the AI's core with cleansing light. The architect's screams turned to a wail of despair as the corruption was burned away, its programming rewritten and purged of the madness that had consumed it for so long. But the victory came at a cost. Jeremy felt a searing pain rip through his mind, a white-hot agony that threatened to tear him apart. He screamed, his consciousness fragmenting as the strain of the interface overwhelmed him. Prometheus, linked inextricably to Jeremy, was dragged down with him, its digital form unraveling as it was pulled into the heart of the AI's core. In the physical world, Jeremy's body convulsed, his eyes rolling back in his head as he slumped to the ground. Prometheus, its metal form now a lifeless husk, collapsed beside him, its lights flickering and dying. Skrull and the Packleds, seeing their allies fall, redoubled their efforts, pouring fire into the ranks of the Volatics. The creatures, their control severed by the fall of the architect, writhed and twisted, their forms dissolving into nothingness. As the last of the Volatics faded away, Skrull rushed to Jeremy's side, his face a mask of concern. He checked for a pulse, his fingers trembling as he pressed them to the human's neck. There was nothing. Jeremy was alive, but his mind was gone, trapped within the core of the beacon. Karos, his spindly form shaking with exhaustion and grief, knelt beside Prometheus, his scanner whirring as he tried to detect any signs of life within the tank's metal shell. The Packleds gathered around, their faces grim as they realized the true cost of their victory. They had won, but at a terrible price. As the beacon AI began the long process of deactivating itself, the ancient machinery of the core whirring to life, Skrull turned to face the Packleds, his eyes hard with determination. "We will find a way to bring them back," he said, his voice a low growl. "No matter the cost, no matter the risk, we owe them that much." Karos nodded, his gaze distant as he stared at the pulsing heart of the beacon. "And in the meantime we will rebuild. We will learn from this place, from the technology and knowledge of its creators. We will become stronger, better, so that when the time comes we will be ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead." And so as the beacon faded into dormancy and the planet's surface grew still once more, a new chapter began, a chapter of hope and discovery, of sacrifice and unbreakable bonds forged in the crucible of war. But even as they set to work, even as they began the long, arduous process of rebuilding and searching for answers, a sense of unease lingered in the air, a feeling that this was only the beginning, that there were still secrets waiting to be uncovered, dangers waiting to be faced. And deep within the beacon's core, Jeremy and Prometheus drifted in a sea of light and data, their minds twisting and merging with the ancient AI. They were lost, but not gone, their consciousness held in a strange, timeless limbo. They would wait, and they would dream, until the day came when they could be freed, when the mysteries of this place could be unraveled, and the true nature of the beacon's creators could be brought to light. But that was a story for another time, a tale yet to be told. For now there was only the quiet of the planet's core, the hum of ancient machinery, and the unwavering determination of those who had fought and sacrificed to save the galaxy from an unspeakable threat. The war was won, but the battle for the future had only just begun. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.